Welcome, and so happy that some of you are enjoying the material that we're doing. It's challenging, clearly challenges me, and but on the other hand, I think it's just a wonderful additional way of looking at the Torah. I know that the material we've done does not appear to exist in translation, and so I hope that's a reason for you to enjoy it perhaps even more. And again, if you have any comments, appreciate hearing from you. And if you like it, please, if you do like it, mention a bit about that. That would be wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen now. And here we are. You should be able to see it at this point. So here's the verse. It's verse 26. It's on the sixth day, and it's a famous verse, Na'ase Adam, right? Let us make man. And here it is, down here at the bottom. Vayomer Elohim, Elohim, God said, Na'ase Adam, let us make man. Note the plural. This is something we've mentioned. B'Tselmenu, in our image. It's not our images, but our image. Otherwise, there'd be a yud between the mem and the nun. Kidmutenu, according to our likeness. Vayirdu v'datayam, and let them govern, let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over of hashamayim, and over the winged fowl, uvahabeima, and the cattle, uvachol haaretz, and over all the earth, uvachol haremis, and all the swarming things that swarm over the earth, right? And the issue here, of course, is we believe in one God, right? We believe in only one ultimate source of all of reality. That's a cardinal principle of Judaism. And here we have that being, that existent one, that creator saying, let us, plural, right? So this is a question, right? It seems to possibly suggest a contradiction. So here's what he has to tell us. Ma'aseh b'Talmai HaMelech. There was an incident, it happened, story told about Ptolemy, the king. Shekines ayin bet zkenim. He brought together 72 elders. V'heichnisan b'ayin bet batim. And he brought them into 72 different houses, right? 72. They were all separated. V'amar la chol echad, and he said to each one, each individual, kitvu li Torat Moshe Rabchem, write for me the Torah of Moses, your master, right? This is the origin, of course, of the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Torah, not of the Bible, right? I believe it's the entire Bible, the Septuagint. I'm only saying I believe because I'm not absolutely certain, but I'm pretty certain it's the Bible. This Greek version of the Bible, Greek translation. Natan HaKadosh Baruch Hu Eitzah B'Lev Kol Echad. And a miracle took place. That is, that God, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, gave advice into the hearts of each Kol Echad Ve'echad, into each and every one. And every one of them wrote, V'chatvu lo, and they wrote for Ptolemy, right, into Greek, E'eseh Adam, I will make, singular, I will make a man, b'tselem uvidmut, in an image and a likeness. And this is taken from Tractate Megillah in the Talmud, page 9a. So this is part of the miracle of the Septuagint, that the translation that they did this, they all did the same translation. The idea is that you had 72 people who all wrote the same translation for Ptolemy, right? And the Torah Temimah is going to explain what was the point. Why was he doing this? Why didn't he just have one person do it, or maybe 5 people do it? It's a big job, but why 72? Velo kakatuv. And the point is this, that their translation wasn't as it's written in the Hebrew, belashon rabim, right? They did not translate it as a plural. They did not translate it as let us make man. They said, let me make man, right? That's how they translated it. Kadei shelo yomar, right? So that he shouldn't think, or he shouldn't say, it shouldn't be said, shtei rishuyot. There are two ultimate authorities, Hain. That is that the idea here is that there's more than one, that it's polytheism, right? It's just monotheism. And that it would be an umashe be'emet ketiv belashon rabim. But he goes on to say, well, we still have to account for the fact that it is written in the plural, right? The Hebrew's in the plural. And so Torah Temimah Baruch Halevi Epstein is just explaining to us, right? The reason why in the Hebrew it's written in the plural, mishum mi derech hakadov hakavod v'hagdola kachu. This is a convention of language to express honor and greatness. And I love to give the example that when you told Queen Victoria a joke, right, and she didn't think it was funny, what did Queen Victoria tell you? Tell me.
You don't think it's funny.
We are not amused. We are not amused. We are not amused. And if Queen Victoria wanted to go for a walk, she said, we want to go for a walk. And that is typical. It is more than just in Hebrew. It is, I can't speak for other languages, but certainly in English, it represents the same. It represents the sui generis nature of a monarchy, of a king. It's a way of creating a distinction. Right? So he says that's the reason in the Torah it says the plural. Ukamod b'melech basar v'adam. He says this is exactly like a mortal king, a human king, a king of flesh and blood. Shemidaber b'lashon rabim. He speaks in the plural. He refers to himself in the plural. Ella, however, Ptolemy lo haya mekabel zeh. It was possible that Ptolemy wouldn't accept this. He wouldn't accept this reason. Mipnei she'ulai haya rotzeh limtso ilah b'Torah Moshe. Because possibly the reason, his motivation for getting this translation done wasn't a purely beneficent idea, but rather an attempt to find some kind of falsehood, some kind of pretext in the Torah. V'nir'eh, and it would appear, te'af al pi shehayu yicholim la'avi lo ra'aya, okay, and even though it seems to be the case that perhaps, or that even though the sages would have been able to provide him with proof, okay, the Rashut Echad Bebriya, right, that there's only one ultimate source of authority in creation. Where from? Mi dichtiv b'pasuk hasamuch, because right next to that, it says Vayivra Elohim et Adam. It says Elohim Vayivra, singular verb, right? It represents past tense, the perfect of a singular, third person singular. Okay, El Adam. Ukamoshe katuv b'drisha haba'ah, and is actually mentioned in the next explanation. In other words, in the next piece of Torah Temimah that we read, they're going to mention this proof. That nevertheless, lo hayu rotzim lihitvakechu. They didn't want to get into an argument and dispute with him. Keep it simple, right? Harbe. They didn't want to have to argue with him a lot. Ukemoshe katav kahai gavna betamid, and there's a similar, in other words, in Masechet Tamid, page 32a, possibly that's where they say they didn't want to get into these arguments with him. Okay, but with regards to Alexander Mokdon, with regards to Alexander the Macedonian, in other words, Alexander the Great, right? Veziknei HaNegev. This was a discussion that the elders of the South and Alexander the Great had. We actually did this much earlier on. Uyan Sham, it can be, you can check this out, Ulefanenu, and ahead of us, La'el B'Pasuk Aleph, okay, and above. This means not ahead, but on top, in other words, before. We already discussed this in verse 1 of Genesis. Uma shenogea od la'agada zo, and further matters that pertain to this particular agada, this of information, this legend, I suppose we could say, right? Bi'arnu la'el, we already explained this above. The Parshat Bereshit bara Elohim, the pasuk. I'm sorry, the pei here stands for pasuk in the verse Bereshit bara Elohim, right? When God began to create. Ye'uyan sham, you can look it up, v'tzaref lekan, and you can apply it to this place too. So we have more than one case where we see that there's this issue of referring to God in the plural in some sense, and that being defended very early on. This is a very early issue in terms of Bible understanding and Torah understanding. So if we wanted to go back, or if you want to go back, you can go back to early Torah Temimah issues. In fact, possibly the very first one in this series, and there we discuss it. We translate it and discuss it. Onwards. Next, na'ase Adam. Let us make. That's it. Let us make man, etc. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, right? The famous Rabbi Yochanan. We've mentioned him already. You can see he's going to come up a few times. An Amora. He lived after the close of the Mishnah. He lived after the year 200, so he may have lived in the 200s or the 300s, etc., somewhere in there. That was the time when the Talmud was being developed, and the teachers of the Talmud mentioned in the Talmud are known as Amoraim, special term for them. Anyway, Rabbi Yochanan said, "Kol makom shepakru hatzidukim tzudakim shuvatam betzidam." And if you look very carefully, I'll make it a little bigger. Do you see that I put a little asterisk there? And a little asterisk there next to the J. The J stands for the Jastrow Dictionary, page number, and the Jastrow Dictionary has a line going down the middle of the page. The left side is called the A side, the right side is called the B side. I have to thank Rabbi Dulkin for that suggestion there about the A and the B side. But the point about this is it's something when I was teaching in a group of students, and I was trying to teach them dictionary skills, I mentioned them something that I would call a jackpot jastro. A jackpot jastro is that when you look up the word like I looked up the word pakar, the root pakar, and as you look into his entry, you find the exact phrase, right there, the exact phrase that you're looking up for, not just the word, but the exact phrase, and he gives the translation for it. And there he says, the way to translate this was, every place where the Sadducees seem to find support for their claim that there is more than one God, right? Shuvatam b'tzidam, or some issue that they wanted to raise, their refutation is right next to it. In other words, every place where they find it, the refutation of that support is found right there, and we need to show an example. Hem pakru b'pasuk na'ase Adam b'tzalmenu kidmutenu. So they raised the issue of the plurality of saying, let us make man in our image and our likeness. Ma'akativ batre, and right afterwards it says, Vayivra Elohim. It says Elohim created. Third person, masculine, singular. It's Adam B'Tzalmo. And not only that, it says B'Tzalmo. That's also singular. Otherwise, it would be B'Tzalmav, right? Or Tzalmehem. Yes, question, Harlan? No?
Yeah, I was wondering why they thought there was more than one God.
Well, again, I'm not sure if Well, there are people who believe there are various powers in the world and do not attribute maybe ultimate, that feel that the various forces in the world are in tension with one another and don't believe that there is one supreme existent one to whom we all ultimately need to show loyalty to. because they're our creator and they care about us, and they are the ones who brought us into existence to begin with. So I'm not certain. And honestly, I didn't think the Sadducees, I thought, tended to believe that there wasn't immortality and things like that, that there were other kinds of issues that they raised. So I'm not exactly certain, I have to confess, I'm not entirely certain that this was necessarily the point that they were trying to make, that in fact, that there was more than one ultimate divine being. I might be able to find something elsewhere, but that's the best I can do right now. It's just that, and Tzedukim, right, generally it refers to, and interestingly, ironically, Harlan, and that makes this more difficult for me, is the Tzedukim comes from Tzadok, who was one of the great high priests, that it represented a priestly class, and if possibly they were saying that there wasn't Torah mina shamayim, that they undermined some kind of belief that the Torah came from a divine source, possibly, but again, doesn't seem to fit with their social class. So I have to leave this as an unanswered question for the moment. Okay. Let's see up here. This is his comment. Here we go. Uma dichtiv be'emet belashon rabim. He says, he's going over this once again. He says, and in truth, the reason why it's written in the plural, hu mishum dechein hu miderech hakavod v'agdolah. It's the same thing he said before. The reason for the plurality is it's a linguistic way, or a linguistic convention of how one expresses honor and glory and greatness, just as we wrote in the very previous explanation, we just did it. And likewise, when we're referring to the verse 1 and this is footnote 6. Let's see, is anything else here? Yeah, he simply says, Ye'uyan Sham. Check it out there. Go look at it and see. You'll see for yourself. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else. I think we're right now here. So it goes on to say, right? I'll go up here a little bit, right? Just to finish it up. Vayivra Elohim, and here it is, right? Singular. God created et. What did he create? Et ha'adam, the man. B'tzalmo, in his image. B'tzelem Elohim, in the image of God. Bara'oto, he created him. Zachar unkeva bara'otam. So interesting, right? He says male and female, he created them. And they're all referred to as Adam. So even though we often understand Adam as meaning male, this verse clearly states that Adam refers both to male and female. Clear. We mentioned this in a previous section. Okay, let's take a look at it. Okay, this is beautiful. It's interesting in some way. I don't know if I'd call it cute, but maybe in a way. In his image. What do we mean by in his image? I mean, the truth is that's sort of very arcane. It's not easy to understand. Melamed. So what is this? It's one of the things it teaches you, Shenivra Adam Harishon Mahu, that first Adam was born circumcised. He was already circumcised. This is not from the Talmud. This is from a midrash called Avot de Rabbi Natan. Right? This is it is extant. It's there. And I don't know if this is Perik Bet, meaning chapter 2 of Avot de Rabbi Natan. There's some very interesting midrashim in Avot de Rabbi Natan. And by the way, I believe something like, so it means like the patriarchs of Rabbi Nathan, basically meaning quotations from sages. I believe this has been translated into English, interestingly enough. Okay, so.
My problem is, Rabbi, that the image of God, I think of the image of God. The only thing is, when Moses was on the Mount Sinai, God says, "I'll let you see me, but I'll cross over real fast." And he said, "You can't see my face."
Right.
But Moses saw his back, so it must be like he was made in our image. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm
So
just
you're
guessing.
thinking that this must mean that God has a physical image? Is that the
Yes, that's
point you're making?
thinking.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So, okay. I will tell you that it isn't necessity. One doesn't have to say that. Maimonides, as I remember this, Maimonides' explanation of this, he explains it by saying that seeing God's face means being able to see the future. And seeing God's back means being able to understand the past. So that what God was saying to Moses was, I will give you the ability to understand the past in a very deep kind of way, even though I'm not going to give you the ability to see the future. So that's how Maimonides chooses to interpret this statement. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, so much of the Torah, I believe, is stated it's a great and deep metaphor that's talking about spiritual kinds of things, and that when it's talking about human beings being created in the image of God, it means the incredible ability that human beings have to relate to this world on all kinds of levels, and the degree of advances we've made in technology. We haven't made advances, obviously, in human relations, but we've made advances in technology. That would be an example of being created in the divine image, because as far as we're aware, there isn't any other animal form that is capable of such things. Okay. So let's get on to this, though. We've got just a few minutes. This isn't a very long comment here to say, why would they say such a thing? That saying man was made in the image of God meant that he was created circumcised. Yesh lefaresh tam hadrasha. It's possible to explain the meaning, right, the point of this interpretation. De kevan shenivra betzelem hakadosh baruch hu, that since Adam was created in the image of the Holy One, blessed be he, b'vadai lo hayat tzarich od shum tikun. If he was created in that divine image, he was perfect. His image had to be perfect. In other words, literally, I'll translate this for you. There was no need, lo hayat tzarich od, there was no need for any further improvement, any further perfection. Leikare tamim, in order to be called tamim, perfect, to be called perfect. V'amru b'nedarim, and they say in the tractate Nedarim, page 32a, ad shenimol Avraham, there it says, until Abraham was circumcised, lo haya nikra tamim, he was not referred to as perfect. Umikevan she'adam harishon shehaya tamim bevriato, and since the very first Adam, right, the very first man who was perfect in his creation, mevu'ar, because he was in the image of the divine image, mevu'ar behechreach, you're forced to explain shenolad mahu, that he was born circumcised. So that is it. We'll put this here.
I don't know that.
I think I'm going to do this. Let's see if I can do this. There, well, it's a little too thick. Hope you're enjoying the sights and sounds. That's better. And we'll move this over here so we know where to go. And I'm going to make another one. Okay, let's go here. Excuse me, sorry. Yeah, right up there. This is where we'll start with God's help tomorrow. And I'm going to stop the share and, oh, how nice. I didn't. Okay, and I will stop the recording.